I'm the Land Use Director. I'm going to do a roll call vote to confirm the members that are here. I'll call your name. Please respond that you were here and that you can hear me. Matthew Allison.
I'm here and can hear you.
Tanner Cole.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Matthew Brenner.
I am here and I can hear you.
And Paula Bertram will not be here, and I believe we are anticipating Eric Torgerson, but we're going to, I believe through the chair, we're going to carry on.
Yeah, hopefully he'll give me a call or log on with the directions I gave.
All right, so here we go with the fun announcement. Good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. And all town facilities are currently closed to the public outside of 10 to 2 Monday through Thursday, in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws Chapter 30A, Section 20. All public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, access through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. Although not required, this meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Planning Board is convening via Zoom video conference, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Using a smartphone, tablet, or computer, go to zoom.us and enter the meeting number, or call 888-475-4499 and enter meeting ID number 843-130-71436. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature. You can find it on the chat section on smartphones and tablets and computers. If you are dialed in, you can press #9, I believe, is the raise hand function. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I'll turn it over to the chair. He will carry the meeting on from here, and he will call on people if they have questions.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Bernie. We have a new participant. I believe. Can you unmute?
Yes, I can. Is that your phone, Eric?
This is Eric, yes.
Excellent. Eric Torgerson is our fourth member tonight.
Yeah, I tried to join you last 2 weeks ago on Facebook, but you guys couldn't see my comments. So my apologies about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no worries. Apologies for not having been aware of your comments.
It's all good.
Okay, very good. So we are all present except for Mrs. Bertram, and we've all called to order. Is there any public comment tonight? Seeing no public, any board comment?
I have a board comment, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. I was recently contacted by a resident regarding a project for which we've issued a stormwater permit and also site plan approval. She has several concerns about that particular project, and I forwarded the email along, and I'm just hoping we can put it on the agenda so we can discuss it.
So yeah, to follow up on that, I believe you forwarded it to me alone. I in turn forwarded it to Adam, and it will potentially be distributed because as it was an email sent to a member, it becomes the public information, I believe.
Now that we've discussed it in the meeting, that's correct.
So also in somewhat regard to that was after the fact, but the week before last, one of the members, Mr. Cole, contacted me with some concerns, and we set up a sit down with Adam Burney, and we had discussions about numerous projects and processes. And I don't want to. I want to be transparent. I want to be open. There were some certain specific projects that probably were best. It was just clarification for our process and how we go about doing things. And I certainly would like to have conversations about those things in the near future. But that's just to bring everybody up to speed. Again, the chair and the vice chair sat down with the land use director 2 weeks ago. And we hope to have some outcome to share with the board in some future date. Is there any further public or board comment?
I just want to have a clarification on what agenda item you'd like placed, Tanner, and what the anticipated or hopeful outcome is of that.
Well, I think, in reading her concerns, a lot of it is outside the direct purview of what we do as a planning board. But the issue is that we issued a site plan approval and a stormwater permit for that particular project.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm looking for two things. One is, how do we address her concerns and hopefully help the project move forward in a positive direction in that particular case? But more broadly, I'd like to use this particular situation and apply it to the process and say, okay, where did we come up short? Where should we have done things maybe a little bit differently? Should we have been a little bit more clear? Maybe we should have conditioned things differently, whatever those, anything that we can identify as a board and move forward in a direction that hopefully prevents these type of situations in the future. So I guess as an agenda item, we need that particular project on there, but there's also a little bit of a discussion that should unfold more broadly in terms of any stormwater permit we issue. What are the steps? And what are the standard conditions that should apply to any site?
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it may too be communication amongst town employees in regards to, this plan was approved with these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
How does that get communicated down the line so that there's a clear understanding between us, the zoning official, building services, any of the inspectors, conservation,
Sure.
A third party, like the recent stormwater permit we just issued, we have a third party
Mm-hmm.
doing the construction monitoring. So what does that process look like? In my mind, we should have a flow chart very similar to the book that MRPC did for us that goes through the whole permitting process.
Mm-hmm.
There should be a roadmap there so that the applicant has a clear understanding of how this whole thing's going to work and isn't as surprised along the way. But also any abutter or stakeholder in the process, whether it's a third-party construction monitor or another board or commission that has business on that same site. So.
Okay. I just wanted to be able to be adequately prepared.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you get all that, Adam?
I got enough that I know what I'm thinking about.
Okay, excellent. And then just one more clarification is that this board of elected officials is it makes binding decisions for the planning board. And correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but my understanding is that as a land use director and the planning director, you're kind of working for this board. Is that fairly accurate?
I work, yes, I do the board's day-to-day work.
Okay. So when there's things that come to the board and the board makes decisions, and grants permits or whatnot, then anything to do with that should come back to the board, right? If in the future.
Well, the enforcement of the board's decisions in most instances is carried out through the building commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I don't see a problem with the board being given information that's all public record. But I mean, yes, I don't know that every single enforcement action or request for enforcement that the building inspector gets in reference to a planning board project coming back to the board is the most efficient or for the board, quite frankly. I mean, sometimes you'll get called, there'll be a call and they'll say, oh, well, they're building this over there, and he'll go out, he'll look at the plan and he'll say, yeah, it's right here on the plan. And the neighbor will go, oh, I didn't know that.
Okay.
You know, I think issues like this that don't have a simple resolution, I think the board being informed of them makes sense. I think there's some judgment call that needs to be made in that process.
Very good. That was good, and I really didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
No, it's not a hard question, but every instance is so different that it's hard to say every one of them is important for you to see.
sure, fair enough. Okay, any further comment from anybody? Okay, we'll move on to our number 3, bylaw discussions, chapter 204, stormwater and storm sewers. And I think they're two separate that can probably be talked about together, the low development.
Yeah, you know, and I put them together just because they're both bylaws. I would say the difference right now is that Chapter 204 currently exists. The board has been working on, and I would say is significantly far along in a required update to that bylaw. It's much closer to being put on a town meeting warrant, and LED bylaw is a new concept and something that members have expressed interest in, but we don't have any work other than a draft from another community.
Okay, and for the benefit of the new members, having already had a stormwater bylaw gave us a pass for the requirement, or was already fulfilled year 1 or year 2 for the permit. And I believe that our stormwater consultants have told us that it's good for the duration, as far as I can tell, with these edits.
Correct. So this was originally put in place in, I believe 2007 was when the bylaw was adopted. It was adopted as a zoning bylaw. And it was in response to the National Pollution Elimination Discharge System Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System permit issued by the EPA. So the NIPD's MS4 Phase 2 permit required that the town come up with a bylaw to address erosion and sedimentation control during and post-construction. That resulted in this bylaw. That permit was issued, the NIPD's permit was issued in 2003. It was originally a 5-year permit. In 2018, it was renewed, so 15 years later, and we're now in a new permit, and that permit has some new standards as far as erosion and sedimentation control and stormwater controls for new and redevelopment projects. And the edits that are proposed to this bylaw are essentially taken straight from the permit to allow the town to comply now and for the life of that permit.
Okay. So we received 3 things in our packets about stormwater. Two drafts from Westminster, I believe, and
Yes.
the third is our existing bylaw with markups.
And I would call this the draft bylaw because although there are markups, there's this, I won't say a significant amount, but there's some substantial alterations that have been made in here that have been accepted by the board to this point, so they don't show as alteration.
Okay. Okay. So if you're concerned about the alterations that have occurred and you don't see the markup of it for the new
I can
members,
get previous iterations. I have
you can go
the
to
digital files.
you can compare it to our current bylaw
Oh, you could do that as well.
in the current code. But again, as Adam said, the board membership at the time had agreed upon the revisions, and we don't have final say. So whatever we prepare has to go to town meeting. So we're not the last word, but close. Anyways, so what? So I think this is pretty much the same thing that was in our packets last week.
It is.
So has everyone had an opportunity to review them?
I have, and one of the things that I picked up on was with draft number 3, September 2019 of the Westminster Low Impact Development Rules. Under number 5.1, the first line says, the building inspector shall not issue a building permit without first confirming that an LID permit has been obtained or is otherwise not required, which I found to be very interesting language. I don't know if that's something that we want to incorporate into our stormwater stuff, not necessarily as low impact development, but in the overall stormwater permit language.
Sure. Did I cut somebody off? I'm sorry. Yeah, no, in the past, we've shied away from dictating authority to other groups. If that's, Adam can correct me if that's not true.
Oh, that sounds correct.
But I don't think we're delegating any responsibilities. It's simply saying that the building inspector shall not issue a building permit, which we don't do building permits, but they shall not issue a building permit without first confirming that this set of regulations doesn't apply.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I just wanted to vocalize the previous thing that I said, and I do agree with you, Tanner, that I would feel strongly about having that language in our bylaw as well.
Yeah. I just think it would help us as a board manage the situation and make sure that in cases where a permit is required, that they're going through the process, and the cases where it's not required, they just go forward with business as usual. So.
Right. And that kind of comes full circle with one of the issues that we had discussed at the group. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can add that. That's easy enough to add in there. It'd probably end up somewhere in the MNOPQ area of the bylaw, which is all of the wrap-ups, enforcement, that kind of stuff.
Okay, you can shoehorn it in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of we'll re-letter and it'll fit in there.
All right. Anybody else? So Mr. Brenner had some questions in general last meeting about some of the stuff in this topic. Did you get satisfactory answers to all of your questions?
I'm still researching I'm happy with just about everything, except I would like to verify that the specific numbers that have been included are effectively future-proofed. That where we talked about them being based on historic numbers, and I'm doing some research to see that they may well already be future-proofed, and if so, then I think it's great, and I'm all for it. But knowing that we may be looking at worse storms in the future, I want to make sure that we're putting something in place that isn't only okay today or isn't okay 5 years ago and iffy today, but is going to be okay for years to come, in large part as a fiscal responsibility measure, because I don't want to put us into a position where we put in a bylaw whose protections aren't sufficient and end up costing the taxpayers a lot more money in the future to kind of fix problems that could accumulate. I'm talking to a couple people who actually a civil engineer who happens to specialize in sewers and stormwater, just to make sure I understand what numbers maybe are supposed to be, or not. Supposed to be is the wrong term, because these are clearly the required numbers. But if the required numbers are sufficient looking forward.
So I'm not sure I've heard future-proof before in a planning board meeting, but basically we're kind of stuck with the Fed and the state as far as numbers. A lot of this stuff has been set. Our Army Corps of Engineers, they've just redone flood elevations in certain towns. I know Concord, either last year or the year before, the flood elevation rose 2 feet.
We're actually that'll be coming out this way in the next 18 months or so.
Okay. So, and we reference the current version of all the regulations and lists of things like that. I believe we do the rainfall data is within the stormwater handbook, is it not? But I should know. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's basically just statistical data that needs to be updated. Our flood map was last updated in the 80s, I think.
And that's also being updated.
Right. And it may change, it may not. And then when we were doing the municipal vulnerability program stuff, the presenter had an interesting slide that caught my eye, saying that our climate has changed, and our average now is closer to something in Rhode Island, to the statistics that we've got, and then possible future worst case scenario could put us down in the North Carolina range in 30 to 50 years, something. But it just goes to speak to the future proofness or future proofability.
Mm-hmm.
But we are backed by the numbers that the state and the feds are reporting.
And I think one thing that, Tanner had said this to you and I, Matt, one thing we have to consider is we need to take this to town meeting to get it passed. Mm-hmm. And what we have now, and I'm not opposed to exploring and having discussions about increasing numbers, because we can make things more restrictive than are required. We just can't make it less restrictive. When we get to town meeting and we say, hey, here's this fancy bylaw, we want to pass this, people are going to say, oh, that's great. Tell us about it. And, okay, we've done this and we've future-proofed the numbers. Well, are those numbers that are required, or are they numbers you came up with based on something else? And perhaps no one will have the issue. The thing that we need to be prepared to do is say, oh, we can back off to the numbers that are required, because not passing this is something that would be long-term problematic in a variety of different ways. So I just think it's important to put that back on the table as something that we need to think about as we look at it over time.
So I can be more clear about where I stand on this, which is I want us to be able to put forward the best bylaw possible, but I understand that things like votes at town meeting could legitimately be a factor because this is still significant. I mean, this is sitting as it is and no better is an absolutely necessary step, and that's something I understand.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that it was said, and
Yeah.
and we know that this process is important, and it ultimately could be something we explore and decide for whatever reasons is not feasible right now.
So I guess one of my questions would be timeline wise. I would like to kind of finish up this research and see if we do need to be more restrictive in order. I'm not talking 50 years down the line. I can even be more narrow and say my specific goal is to make sure we don't have a bylaw that we can't update, that nature ends up outpacing. I guess I could say I don't want us to be in a scenario where we say this is the requirement, and then we end up with where we end up in a situation where we're having excessive damage either to the ecosystem or to land in any format. Good golly, lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. I don't want us to be in a scenario where the damage can accumulate faster than it's something then we could make a change, a potentially necessary change. Now, I guess my question is, we talk about how this mirrors the federal data that we've been given. And what I don't see in this, and this may be something that happens automatically, I don't know the way this happens on the back end. When the federal data changes, do we then need to vote to update the bylaw, or is that an automatic process, or how does that happen?
So this is information that's in the permit. So the permit was issued in 2018. Right now, it's anticipated to be a 5-year permit. The last 5-year permit was 15 years. So it's as the permit gets updated. So we haven't done, this is only the second time we've updated this bylaw for content on the face of what's required as far as storm mitigation and pollutant removal. And that's based on, the original was based on the 2003 permit. It's currently based on the 2018 permit. There's some discussion about the Commonwealth of Massachusetts taking over what's called supremacy. So DEP would be the issuing agency of the permit as opposed to the federal EPA. That they expect to be a 5-year process. They were talking about that when the permit was originally issued. There were some negotiations with COVID and the federal government operating the way it does. I don't know how far along those have moved. With the permit being enacted, there's been much less general information sessions necessary about what's happening with the permit because it's here. But ultimately, that the DEP being the issuing agency could accelerate the permit renewal timeline because it's one agency dealing with its own commonwealth, and that makes it easier for them to issue a permit as opposed to having to go up the federal chain and then back down to get it issued.
All right, thank you. That gives me some understanding of the process on that end.
Excellent. And just to give you some real world examples of the data that they're using currently, the rainfall events for the 2-year, the 5-year, the different year storms.
Yep.
We have been continuously having more and more multiples of larger term events within shorter terms. So like the 100-year flood is supposedly 6 plus something inches in a 24-hour period. I'm not sure when we've had that, but I do believe it's been more than twice in my recollection for the 100-year storm, and I'm not 100 years old yet. So
that hits my concern square. That hits my concern squarely on the head.
Okay.
That is exactly my concern. Is if we're planning based on baseline numbers, and they're assuming a 100-year flood is a 1 in a 100-year event, when we know the data are strongly indicating that's not the case. I'd like to see us try to prepare something that reflects reality rather than old data or wishful thinking. Again, that's both an environmental concern for me and a fiscal concern, where I don't want us to be in a situation where things in the town are getting damaged because we haven't thought things through ahead, even if other towns aren't making that step.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, and I think this is an important point, and I hope I understand it correctly. The 100-year storm is an intensity level of rain within a fixed time period. And when the designs are done, they're required to be able to handle 100. I think we require them to plan for 5, 10, 25, and 100. So the facilities that are being installed are meeting the 100-year storm level in the event that it does happen. And I think that the names are unfortunately a bit of a misnomer, because it's not intended to happen every 100 years. It's just it's an intensity of rain event. So more of those rain events are problematic. But if it's a matter of, originally we were designing for 25 years and we're seeing more hundreds, then we need to look at designing for 100, because that's the rain event we're seeing as the maximum on a more regular basis, as opposed to the timeline of when they happen. It's making sure the facilities can handle that amount of water and whatever comes with it.
Sure. And I don't mind using the schools as a good example because it's a relatively new building. They designed for the 25-year storm, and the level of water in the fixed drainage system was just below the rim elevation on the lowest rim catch basin in the parking lot. Multiple times since that school has been built, there has been ponding around that catch basin. That school's been built, 4 years, 5 years? So I'm pretty sure it's TR 55, TR 50 or TR 55, a technical report, and it's quite old. And basically it's just lines drawn, and it's very specific. I mean, the inches change by tenths of an inch within probably 20 or 30 miles or less on a map of Massachusetts. So at the time of creation, that was a very specific document. And I do believe it was the rain, the level event statistically to happen within 100 years. I think there was some statistics involved in that, but it's increased. There's no doubt about it. It's increased. But again, I mean, short of funding a study like that for the state of Massachusetts, which I think would be really, really hard pressed to find any money for. But it's a very good point. I mean, and it's one that I bring up. We can't just look at numbers and blindly accept them. But, and on the flip side of that, we should not create numbers and arbitrarily enforce them.
No.
Right? Okay. Okay. Point well taken. Thank you. Anything more?
No, we have the lid bylaw. I know it's new. It's not something we'll be bringing to fall town meeting. I know that Mrs. Bertram is very interested in this. I don't know if you want to discuss it now or if you want to wait until she's available and devote some time to it then.
Well, yeah, I would certainly open it up to anybody that has reviewed it and has comment on it.
Mr. Chair, I mean, I took a good look at it. I think it's worth considering from my perspective. I just caution us in moving forward, because we've been met with quite a bit of resistance when it comes to any new regulations. That's just kind of the vibe that we get at town meeting. So in light of that, I feel like we should just focus on the stormwater stuff. And I guess I have two small comments on the stormwater portion of things. I certainly respect where Mr. Brenner is coming from and trying to look forward and anticipate things and develop a bylaw that protects the environment. But two things come to mind. One is that the bylaw really only impacts new projects going forward.
Mhm.
It isn't retroactive. And so if you look at the town as a whole and you look at the amount of space that's already developed and it's what will reasonably be considered its final use, a development of single family homes, once it's in, it's not going to be redeveloped into anything new. That area isn't going to be impacted by this bylaw. And then, even if we come up a little bit short on, say we follow the federal numbers and down the road we need to make some adjustments, I would certainly err on the side of having a bylaw that's more likely to pass at town meeting, that could be strengthened, altered down the road, rather than go into town meeting with a bylaw that we feel is more protective, but ultimately won't get past the town meeting floor, and then you have nothing. So with those things in mind, I think we focus on the existing stormwater bylaw that we have in front of us, maybe tweaking it a little bit here or there, but try to keep it as simple and straightforward. And being in line with the federal standards certainly helps us in terms of being able to get it approved at town meeting. And then as we go forward down the line, I would certainly like to look at low impact development, adding on to things, trying to increase the amount of protections we have. But I think under the circumstances where we've had a couple of difficult failures at town meeting in the last couple of years, I think we should learn those lessons and try to move forward in a direction that is more likely to get passed. So.
Well, I can appreciate your pessimism, because you've been on the last 2 years, which have not been so favorable for the planning board. But in previous years, we have been fairly successful at public outreach and gaining consensus. I think it's all about consensus building. If you can't convince everybody that we need to change it, then at least give them the opportunity to voice that, and given the other information, agree to disagree, and still, for the greater good, vote in favor of updating a bylaw. There have been some unfortunate circumstances in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I feel like most recently, when it came to the earth removal stuff, there was a lot of confusion that was generated in terms of, this is the bylaw, and then we're going to have rules and regs. And any time that town meeting has to digest that amount of information, it makes it more difficult to pass. It's not as simple as, we're going to rezone this little parcel here or move this line or whatever, where people can look at a picture on the PowerPoint and say, oh yeah, that makes sense. And those type of planning board articles seem to skate right through. But the minute you put 18 pages of text in front of somebody, that I feel like their immediate vote is no until you convince them to vote for it. And unfortunately, we've had a couple of tough breaks at town meetings. So, but at any rate, so.
I know it didn't pass, but I do want to say that the information you put that y'all put together before I was on the board for the earth removal project that was brought forward to town meeting was comprehensive and very educational on the whole process for someone who at that point hasn't been involved in any of this. So it didn't pass, but credit where credit's due. I just want to say that from the outsider perspective there, it was good info. And it was communicated very clearly for something that I understand a lot of people find dry and difficult.
True. Very good. Thank you for that. All right. So anything specific to the low impact development? So Tanner's suggestion was that we focus on the stormwater, which I believe we have, and I think we're about done with our edits. I mean, we've gone back and forth on numerous things. And I certainly want to give plenty of time for the new members to digest and understand and come up with something to input. If you feel like you don't like the number or you'd like something added, definitely. I mean, you're elected just like we are. Everybody here is elected, and everybody's voice counts. So if you have input, and again, as we've been told at town meeting, nothing is binding because the very next town meeting could rescind it or change it or reverse it. So we do the best we can for given what we've got, and just hope for the best, basically.
And I would anticipate that we should be wrapping this up in the next 2 meetings. The warrant should open early September. It's usually only open for 2 weeks. If we submit text, we usually have the ability to modify it if, say, we change a couple of words here or a couple of words there. And we have substantially the text complete, but we want to have it as complete as possible when we submit it.
Right. And then on top of that, there is the task of formulating it and formatting it and making it squeeze and fit properly, which is no small task. And Adam needs to do that before the warrant gets printed, which is what, couple month and a half before the meeting.
I believe it needs to be mailed 6 weeks prior.
Okay, yeah. But you got to go to printing, so.
Or maybe it needs to print 6 weeks prior and it needs to be received 14 days ahead. I would have to look at the charter to see what the numbers are, but yeah, 6 weeks ahead is usually like the absolute drop dead.
Sure. Yeah, and again, I mean, it's no small task to scrutinize a document that's going to become a bylaw. In fact, a lot of the stuff that we've revised in previous bylaw updates has been Scrivener's errors, added words, missing words, wrong words. It's just human nature. You know, we screw up. And I think that's why this is a 5-person board instead of a 1-person board, which wouldn't have much disagreement, I suppose.
We screw up 5 times as much.
That's possible too. I guess that's what we have Adam for. Which is another huge,
5 times as much.
another huge daunting task. All right. So it seems we don't have a lot of input. I did expect that the majority of the input would be from Paula. And a good amount of the input that's already incorporated has been also from Paula. So we really don't have a lot. The rest of it's just minutes and committee reports and some info. I will ask at this point, so I don't forget it at the end. Have we got any update on the population study?
The documents are with the town manager to be signed, and it would be completed by the end of the year.
Okay. So
it is going forward. We've been authorized to spend the money. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends how you look at it, the Donahue Institute is the state's high-level census coordinator with the federal government.
great.
So they're be a bit busy, and they have not returned to their offices yet. And the woman who will be conducting the study is the lead in the decennial census for the Commonwealth. But I did speak to her, and she is excited to do the project. She's got the scope down. She anticipates potentially having it done before the end of the year, but that is all sunshine and roses until it comes time to do it. But I would expect by the new year we'll have a population study.
Sure, super. And I'd like to swing back to that when it comes back to the end for comments. Just have a little bit of discussion about the master plan updating for the new members, just so they know where we're headed, what we've chosen and decided so far. That would be great. And I hopefully won't forget it. But if I do, please someone remind me. So I guess that brings us to the minutes approval. The minutes were all in our packets and they've been distributed via email. So are there any comments on any of the minutes? Okay, so then we'd need a motion and a second to approve them.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for July 27th, 2020.
I'll second.
Excellent. Any further discussion? So we'll have a roll call. Mr. Cole,
Aye.
Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson.
Aye.
I should have preceded that with all in favor, but an aye for myself. So that we have the Northfield Road Scenic hearing.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for July 27th, 2020, the Northfield Road Scenic Road hearing.
And I will second.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Okay, a roll call, all in favor. Mr. Cole,
Aye.
Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. So that wraps up our minutes approval. Committee reports, Stormwater Task Force. I still have not heard from one of the three current existing members. And as it stands right now, that group is charged with only having 3 members. And I can say that the one member who has not, who I have not been able to get in touch with, had suggested that we try to go back to 5 because it originally started as 7. Anyways, regardless, there has been no meeting, so there's no report. The Agricultural Commission will be meeting not this Thursday, but next Thursday via Zoom. Farmers Market is every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. In the center of town, and it is doing very well.
Good.
2 weeks ago we had 20 vendors. And this past Sunday, we had 16 or 17 vendors. And the previous week we did have entertainment, and this past week we didn't. So I really don't think that the entertainment is linked to the attendance of the vendors, but there it is. We've also been able to loosen up on the rules. It's no longer enclosed and barricaded and single way, single direction. As before it was, and we welcome your furry friends. So anybody, pets on leashes are welcome. The TCP Building Design Committee, Mr. Cole.
So at our last meeting, we reorganized. Greg Roy continues to be chair. David Blatt continues to be our vice chair. I have taken over the role of clerk. We've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. We don't have any minutes for any of the meetings in 2019 prepared, so we've got to get that squared away. In terms of the project, most of the civil engineering for the site is done. Most of the interior work has been done. They took samples of suspected hazardous materials throughout the building. They did not have those results by the time of our meeting. So at our next meeting, which is next week, we should get those results back on the hazardous materials. I think in general, we've got a couple of things that are going to be a little bit difficult to tackle when it comes to the engineering and getting a final cost estimate for things. One of the issues we're running into is the traffic study. I was adamant that we do a traffic study, and the engineer had identified a couple of intersections. I encouraged them to go a little bit further with things, because in my opinion, the traffic that queues on Route 2A is pretty substantial during pickup and drop off. So they're looking at that pretty seriously. The challenge is, depending on what school looks like, how do you do a traffic study if everybody's learning remotely or half remotely or hybrid? So who knows? That's going to be a difficult thing to get our head around. Apparently when we started, there was a quote unquote traffic study done for the middle high school. That's not exactly what happened. We got a simple statement from the engineer that said, we don't feel there's going to be a traffic issue, but they didn't do a formal comprehensive study with traffic counts and so on. If that had been done, at least we would have had some previous data from prior to that school being built that we could go on. But so we've got some challenges there. The other thing that came up for a little bit of debate was the space for the Boys and Girls Club. As a committee, we have been charged to develop a cost estimate for town offices, school uses, and community uses, but wasn't really clearly defined what a community use is. The Boys and Girls Club have expressed some interest in taking part of the space that we're looking to develop, but we don't have a thorough understanding of what they're looking for. And so it becomes a little bit challenging when you're trying to build out a cost estimate for a building and you don't know exactly what the space is going to be used for. The bigger part of that question from my perspective is, where do you draw a line and who makes those decisions? I mean, the Boys and Girls Club is currently occupying town space. They don't pay for that space. So it seems to me like it's pretty logical that this would just be an extension of their existing agreement. However, what about other community uses? Who's the gatekeeper in this situation? And you build a space out for one group, why shouldn't you build out a space for another group? So we've got a little bit of work to do there. And especially when it comes to the Boys and Girls Club, that would leave a third vacant building in the center of town. Theoretically, if Boys and Girls Club moves, Town Hall moves, all the Ritter uses move, essentially you've vacated most of the center of town. And what does the future look like for all of those buildings? So we've got a little bit of work ahead of us for sure. So
Excellent. And just to clarify, did you say there are no minutes at all for this new committee? It's been a meeting for over a year?
Well,
Really?
not quite a year, because we were organized last year.
Okay. Any idea how many of them were recorded?
I believe they were all recorded. It's a question of developing the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm 98% sure that they were all recorded. That's my recollection. I think I may have missed one meeting, but my recollection is that they're all recorded. So
Very good. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to mention that the Boys and Girls Club where it's located was built, in my understanding, with funds that were from the Mossman Trust, which is a family from Stillman Farm, and it was donated to the town specifically to be used for agricultural education. I have documents in my possession to that effect. And I would strongly urge the powers that be to consider honoring the direction that the money was given to the town for. So the moving forward, the committee open space, that's Paula. She's not here. MRPC.
That's me. So, with apologies, I did miss the last MRPC meeting because I received the email ahead of time of the agenda and timing, and completely misparsed what I was looking at.
No
So,
worries.
I will review the minutes for that when they come out and get back to us. Again, sorry.
Nope, I appreciate it. And then MRPC, MJTC, did we?
That should be meeting this Wednesday. They have not sent me an agenda yet, so I'm going to reach out to the powers that be to see if it is happening as scheduled.
Excellent. And Mr. Torgerson is capital planning, and they don't meet. So there's no report, right?
Correct. No report.
Very good. I've mentioned it before, and I don't know how big a deal it is, but it's kind of odd to have a committee report listed in our committee reports that we know doesn't meet until next year, or start to meet till the end of the year.
We'll leave it on there to be consistent.
Okay. Okay. That probably won't be the last time I ask, because I'll forget, but
That's okay.
good. That's a good deal.
And I will just put a plug in for Mr. Torgerson to, if he hasn't already, make sure he activates his Lunenburg online account. Capital Planning will communicate through that account. And by using that for town business, you save yourself the potential of any subpoena for personal email. If there is ever a lawsuit against the planning board or otherwise, if there's a records request, the IT department can search and deliver the information from the Lunenburg online account. If not, ask Mrs. Bertram. You could be required to submit your computer for forensic analysis and email search, depending on how tense the litigation might be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And it doesn't matter about the 2 pages. If you say 2 words in a string, in a string, yeah. All right. So we're on to director's items.
So we had talked about the rules and regulations and wanted my desire to update them and my recommendation that we do so. And it was brought up by Mr. Cole that doing it at a workshop would be a more efficient way to do so. I can't disagree with that. I think that setting up a schedule for regularly looking at them in workshops would be an intelligent way to do it, rather than waiting till we have a free meeting to call it a workshop, because as we all remember from the use table, that can take a really long time to come up. Granted, right now things have been a little bit slow, but I guess my proposal would be if every 4th meeting or the first meeting of every other month were a workshop, that would give the board plenty of leeway for doing permit hearings and other business, and still having a fairly regularly scheduled sit down to look over things. I would say the rules and regs would be one of the first things I'd want to put into that, but we could also work on bylaws or procedures or any of the other things the board wants to look at during those times.
Sounds good. Anybody have questions, comments, concerns?
No, I think that makes sense. So it'd be the first meeting every other month, so we can
Correct.
odds or evens, essentially. Even months by months, however we want to. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and and of course, depending on who submits what when, we may or may not be able to keep that consistent in order to expedite permitting for the citizens, but the residents.
Well, and I think things like A&Rs can easily be done on a workshop night. They're a pretty light lift. For everything else, I think what I'd like to start doing is drawing up an annual calendar of meeting dates. And if we block those meetings off ahead of time for 2021, say, we said we'll do the odds. So January, March, May, July, September, November, first meeting of each of those months, workshop. All the other meetings, regular business. And we have that posted, people can plan accordingly. Whether they've taken the opportunity to do so or not is a different conversation.
Very good. And then just kind of follow along on that. I know that the BOS, after they reorganize, they tend to review previous goals and formulate new goals.
They set goals every year.
And I know we have in the past.
And if I recall, maybe 2 or so years, maybe 3 years ago, that was brought up, and I said, that's great. Why don't you all submit some goals to me, and I'll synthesize them. And I think I received goals from just you, Mr. Chair, at the time.
Oh, that's pretty easy to synthesize.
and every meeting, it was, we'll work on that. We'll get it to you soon. And then it just kind of dropped off the agenda because there was no. So I'm happy to revisit that. I'm happy to work with the board on that. I mean, the board is welcome to set goals for themselves at any time.
Yeah, no, I completely remember the scenario, but I just wanted to bring it up again.
Sure.
And I'm open to a discussion on the validity or the necessity of something like that for the planning board. I mean, we're not the Board of Selectmen. I think that we have a much more, well, I guess depending on how you look at it, we have a more strict focus, perhaps. If
They have a narrower lane.
There you go.
Mhm.
So it may not make sense, and that may be why I never got input, or you never got input from anybody but me. It's just bringing up this master plan discussion. The master plan that's almost 20 years old had a bunch of goals and measurable, some of them quite measurable goals that some of them had been achieved, and others, they just often keep getting talked about with no reference to we talked about that 20 years ago. And the turnover, it doesn't help. It's just something I think that it's important to take a look at from time to time when we have a decent change in the membership, just so that everybody that takes part can have at least a small understanding of what's happened in the past, how it worked or why it didn't work or what happened to it. And we're always open to we have the comment in the beginning of the meetings, at the end of the meetings, to try to foster and encourage input, ideas sharing, suggestions, recommendations, for something new or against something current. Again, we are the planning board, and we make our own rules to some point, to some degree. I mean, we are charged. There's was it Chapter 40, Section 81?
Yep. And statutorily, you're given a lot of leeway to handle that kind of stuff.
Right. So if you're interested in the Mass General Law, I think it's Chapter 40, which is zoning, and then I think it was Section 81, and it's like 20, almost 30 or more than 30 sections, because it goes up to double J or something. So it's interesting read.
What was that? What was the chapter and section again?
So it's Mass General Law, MGL, Chapter 40, 40.
Yep.
And it's in Section 81, I believe. Section 81, and it's got A.
Yeah, I think it's 81K through.
Okay, it doesn't start at A.
I don't think it starts at A. I think 4181A is something else. I think it's down into the K. K is about where it starts, I think. But yeah, if you read the titles of those sections, you can get an idea of what's planning board related and what's not.
Lovely. Thank you.
Very welcome.
And another aside to the director's items, I did have a meeting with Mr. O'Brien and his attorney regarding the potential proposal or alternative proposal for the property up at 400 Howard Street. So the building commissioner and I are reviewing this conceptual proposal for compliance with the bylaw, and we will be meeting with Mr. O'Brien again in the future. I will speak with him about distributing that proposal to the board for review, but at this time it's not anything other than a concept. But he is starting to look at what he would like to do up there that's not the 122 single-family homes that were approved.
All right, and just to add on to that, I hope, I sincerely hope that the review for conformance to our current bylaws is very thorough, and the reason we got sued the first time was because it wasn't consistent, and it was a different group of people. Anyways, just keep that in mind, please. So is there anything else from the director? There's nothing else on
That's
this.
it for me.
All right. So the meeting schedule was 6:30, remote participation until further notice. August 24th, we have at our next meeting, we'll have we'll have a reapplication of the
Correct.
scenic. I'm sorry, did someone have say
I
something?
said that's correct.
Okay. He's still gonna wait on the common driveway application?
No, we'll have two A&Rs, the scenic road and the common driveway.
All in the same meeting, okay.
All be wrapped in together it will technically be separate applications. It makes sense to look at them holistically as one discussion.
Yeah, I completely agree. Does anybody have anything to say about that process? Okay, we found it difficult at best to grant A&Rs and then have them come back later and come back for the shared driveway. And well, we told you the things about the possible A&R when you got that, and now you're coming to us with something that's not what we said. So it helps to do it together, I guess. Just from past experience. So that's the only thing that we've got so far on our agenda for our next meeting of August 24th. 2 in September will be the 14th and the 28th. If we want to try to start our odd month workshops, then September 14th.
Yeah, we could do that if that's what the board wishes.
How does everybody feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
Works for me.
Okay. Ms. Torgerson?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. I'm not sure if there's a delay or if it's just something different with the phone connection, but have you had something that you wanted to say that we haven't heard?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Ongoing items.
I think we've discussed those already.
We have actually. It's duplicate. So then we're back to the public comment.
All set?
Look out there.
All right, so I did remember. I wanted to. You may not have it off the top of your head, Adam, but I think it was three. I think it was three. It might have been four different modules out of the master plan that we decided to focus on.
I thought it was 2.
Okay, may have been.
I thought it was the public facilities and services, and it may have been economic development.
I kind of think it was. But anyways, our master plan is available on our website, but I don't know if it's part of the code.
It is.
It's on the planning board page on lunenburgmass.gov. And I think it might, is it in one document or is it multiple sections? I mean, there's multiple sections, but is it one document or are there?
I don't know off the top of my head. My guess is that it's up there in multiple segments just because of the size of it.
Yeah, probably. Because I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I looked at it, but
My recollection is that we have the major document, which was like 01, 02, and then a couple of updates, 05, 07, something like that.
Yep.
But I think they're all there. So you can go over it. And just for the benefit of the new members, I think if you took the time to read some of the Mass General Law, you would have a different perspective on the planning board. When I joined the board, my thought was our primary responsibility is site plan approval and A&Rs and things to do with that. And really our primary responsibility is the master plan. All of this other stuff really has kind of come into being as part of the permit process. As stormwater permits and all this stuff comes along, it all kind of has gotten added on. But the original purpose to the planning board was really specifically for the master plan. And unfortunately, due to a variety of reasons, we haven't gotten much done on that, but hopefully with a population study and, doing some workshops this year, we can kind of get after some of that stuff. So.
And for everybody who's been into the Ritter building, as you walk in and you look to the wall in front of you, you'll see the aerial photographs. And if you don't recall it, to take a look next time you're in there. That was, I think it might have been our first planning board, and in the 60s, very early 60s, they had aerial photographs taken of the town to develop the master plan. And that's from recollection, from reading it out of the Red Book, the Lunenburg Turkey Hills, published in 1979. There's a section in there on the planning board, and from my recollection, that's what that section read. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Just providing some more background information for anybody who's interested. I've read all these documents that I've recommended. A lot of them 8 years ago when I first started on planning, 9 years ago. Anyways, any further comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Excellent. Is there any further discussion on adjourning? Hearing none. All in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Cole?
Aye.
Mr. Brenner?
Aye.
Mr. Torgerson?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the people in the background. And thank you, Lunenburg Ledger.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Adam.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night.
You as well.